All right. Good morning, everybody. Go ahead and get started here. If you got your questions, go ahead and um, put them. Should be below the video for below. If you're on a smaller screen, if you're on a larger screen, it'll be to the right of the video. All right. So we'll start here with Billy W. Says, "I know I'm still standing up at contact, but whenever I stay in posture, cover the ball, I chunk behind it. How do I correct this fault?" Yeah. So you're gonna have to change the release of the club, right? So if you are standing up out of it, then you're going to have to throw the club, right, to get to the ball. Because if you stand up out of it, if you're doing this, right, and then you come into contact and you have shaft lean, right? Well, you're not going to get to the ball, right? You have to release it to get to the ball, right? You have to kind of throw out the club. So now if you stay in your posture and you do the same thing, well, now you're just going to hit the ground behind the ball. So you have to change your release with it. Those things go together. So an early release goes with standing up out of it, and then a later release goes with staying in the posture. So I would recommend working through, the top speed lag course, working through the straight line release course to help you to kind of stay in the posture. It's kind of like a chicken or the egg situation, right? Are you coming up out of your posture because you're releasing it early, or are you releasing it early because you're standing up, right? Well, it sounds like in your situation, you're coming up out of your posture because you're releasing it early. So if you get to where you're releasing it later, right, then that can help you to stay in your posture better. So I would recommend working through the top speed lag course, because if you throw it out right away, you throw the club out right away, you're going to tend to release it early, right? So you want to make sure that you're not throwing that club out right away. And then also the straight line release course, where we get to where we're releasing it out in front, right? But if you don't have the lag first, you're almost guaranteed to release it early. You're gonna have a really hard time releasing out in front if you don't have the lag first. The other thing I would recommend is the 20-minute shallowing fix, because a lot of times we're releasing it early as a reaction to the club face. So if my club face is open, right? If my club face is open, I'm going to release it to square it up. So if we can get the club face more closed, that can help us to release it later. Because that's one thing we want to understand as well, is that lag opens the face while release closes the face, right? So if you have the face open, you have to release it earlier to square it up. If you have the face more closed, then you don't have to release it at impact to square it up. You can release it later, right? And the 20-minute shallowing fix helps you get the club face more closed. So that would be something I would recommend as well. So those would be some courses I'd be looking at: top speed lag, straight line release, and the 20-minute shallowing fix. Now, we do offer online. I know I just gave you a lot of things, and it's like, well, what should I do? Unfortunately, there isn't any way for me to know truly what you need to do. I know if you were to work through all of those things, it would more than likely cover and get you where you need to be. But if you want to kind of streamline it and know exactly what you need to do and kind of get to the point of what you need to do, I would recommend having an instructor look at your swing through our online lesson program. So if you're interested in that, I believe, let me see if anybody's got any spots available. I think I might have one spot available, but let me double check here. Yeah, so I currently have one spot available. So if you're interested in working with me to do the online lessons, you can check out the link above the video, where I can tell you, okay, this is the drill we need to work on to get you where you need to go. But unfortunately, without seeing your swing, I can just kind of give you some things that I know if you work on these handful of things, more than likely you're going to get to where you want to go with it. Because everyone's issues are just a little bit different. So there isn't any way for me to, pinpoint it without actually seeing your swing. All right, let's keep the questions coming. We got plenty of time left. So while y'all are coming up with questions, I'll just be doing some of the other work I got to do. So Billy W says, any drills to avoid wrist flipping when chipping? Yes, focus on turning your body, turning your chest back and through, and have very minimal wrist hinge. A lot of times, if you hinge your wrist a lot, you'll unhinge your wrist. So if you kind of bring it up like this, a lot of times you'll kind of flip it through. So I would kind of focus on turning your body back and through. And think of it much like tossing a ball, right? If you were tossing a ball, you wouldn't go like this, right? If you were to toss a ball, trying to toss a ball accurately anyway, right? Let's say you had a trash can or something, and you had a ping pong ball, and you were trying to toss the ball into the trash can. You wouldn't go like this, right? But that's what flipping your club would do, right? You would bring your arm back and you would bring it through. There wouldn't be a lot of wrist hinge. There might be a little bit, and you would just kind of swing your arm and through. So it's kind of the same thing. I want you to feel like you're swinging the arm back and through, and you're turning your chest and allowing your knees and everything to move to make that happen. So that would look like this. Just imagine like you're tossing it forward. That's the feeling that I would have when you're working on that. It's really just a technical. It's more of it's not necessarily a drill you need to do. It's more your thought process and what you're trying to do, right? So you're not trying to do this. You're trying to toss the ball, almost like you're trying to toss the ball to the hole. I'll tell you, if I handed you a ball and I said, "Hey, I want you to toss this ball toward the hole," I've never seen anyone go like this, right? But that's the equivalent of flipping the wedge through, right? I see everyone kind of swing their arm back and through. They kind of turn their chest, right, to do that, depending on how far it is. So that's the same thing. It's the same thing the chipping motion is. Very much like just tossing a ball toward the target. So that's the feeling that you want to have with your chips. So Charlie G says, from a greenside bunker, what do you do differently when you have minimal green to work with versus need to carry longer distance? Is it just a matter of opening or shutting the club face more or less, shoulder turn, etc.? So in that situation, those shots are a higher degree of difficulty. So I definitely practice them. But basically, what you have to do is you basically hit a normal shot, but a normal like high percentage bunker shot is it's almost like a chunk and run kind of shot, right? We're taking a lot of sand, and we're swinging hard, and the ball's coming out and it's getting on the green, right? We're making sure that we're getting it out. Now, I would still recommend that you do that until you practice this shot. You need, in order to be able to get the ball to kind of stop sooner and kind of have spin on it, you have to hit closer to the ball, right? So it's still a wide open face. It's just that you're catching more of the ball as opposed to a lot more of the sand, right? So you're not going to swing quite as hard, but you're catching more of the ball, and that's going to allow it to spin, right? So instead of hitting like 4 to 6 inches behind the ball, you might be hitting like 2 to 3 inches behind the ball. And that's going to allow you to get a little bit more spin on it and get that stopping power, right? But go practice it. You have to go practice it. A way that you can practice it is you put some balls in the sand, put a line about 3 inches behind the ball, 3 inches in front of the ball, and you're trying to hit that line, right? 3 inches behind the ball, you're trying to get the club to hit that line. So wide stance, wide open club face, right? Ball a little bit forward in the stance, lean on this lead leg, right? And you're trying to keep that face open. That's the other thing. Try to keep that face open so that way you have the loft on there, right? When you're taking a bunker shot, you don't want the face to roll over and close, right? That's gonna add it's gonna take off loft, right? Which is gonna take off spin. We want to have as much loft on the club as possible, so that way there can be as much spin on it as possible. And if we can catch the ball a little bit, that's going to make it spin even more, right? So wide open face, body forward a little bit. We're really trying to hit that line just a little bit behind the ball, right? And thump that sand, and that if you catch a little bit of the ball, right, it'll have some spin on it that will allow it to grab. Right, so that's what I would recommend doing to improve that part. But definitely something you have to go practice. The whenever you see a tour player, pull off a shot like that, that's just not something that they naturally do. That's something that they practiced a lot. So in order to get good at that, you have to practice it. Now, so the reason, and here's the reason why I say you have to practice it, is because there is some associated risk involved with it, right? It takes a level of skill to be able to pull it off, and to develop that level of skill, you have to practice it, right? So when I say there's a level of risk, is that there's a level of risk that you catch too much of the ball and now you scold it over the green, right? Or you scold it into the face of the bunker and it rolls back down into the bunker, right? Maybe sometimes you might get lucky. You'll scold it into the face of the bunker and that pops up out of there and still ends up okay. But that would be very lucky, for that to happen. So in order to get it to turn out the way that you want to, it's something you have to practice and understand. So I would definitely recommend going to your practice bunker. Hopefully you have access to one and be able to practice that. Until you practiced it, when you get into a bunker, I would just make sure that you give yourself a par chance. Sometimes you're going to be in a situation where you're short-sighted and it's going to be difficult to get it close. Those things are going to happen, but you don't want to get yourself in a situation where you're making double or worse. This is the best golfers. What they do is they avoid double bogeys. And if we're trying a shot that we haven't practiced before and that we don't have the skill or the ability to do very well, that's when you get into a situation where you're making doubles or worse, right? Because then you scold it over, and now you might have a 40-yard pitch shot to get up and down for bogey, right? And more than likely that's going to be a double, right? So what I recommend doing is, if you have not practiced this shot, you're not good at it, you don't know what you're doing, take your 20-footer for par, give yourself a chance to make that par. At worst, you're going to make a bogey, right? And then move on to the next hole, right? Sometimes you just got to take your medicine. But if you practice this shot, you have confidence in this shot, you've worked on it, and now it's just time to execute it. Maybe you can give yourself a 5 to 10 footer for par, much better chance for par. You can certainly do that, but again, there is an associated risk with it because you are hitting closer to the ball to get that spin. But that's how you're going to get that spin, is hitting a little bit closer to the ball. So Jan says, hi Q, where would you suggest I have my weight to start my swing? I believe Clay suggests starting with some pressure on the inside of the back foot initially to get the weight on the trail side to start. Thanks. Really, you can have your weight anywhere to start the swing, to be honest. There's pros and cons to having it more forward or middle or back. I'll talk about what that is. But really, it's about where it goes during the swing. That's really what's most important. So in my opinion, the best way to start is to have a little bit of weight on the lead foot, a little bit more weight on the lead foot. The reason is that it allows you to push more weight into the trail foot to start. But if you have trouble getting pressure into the trail foot to start, then it may be better to start with pressure in the trail foot, right? So a lot of it just depends on, what you're good at doing, right? If you're good at moving pressure to that trail foot early to start the backswing, then I would start with it on the lead foot, because that's going to be more dynamic. The more pressure I can move into my lead foot or my trail foot to start the backswing, the more pressure I can move into my lead foot in the downswing, and that's going to allow me to be more powerful, right? So that's why I say, I'm in my opinion, that's what you're going to see in the most powerful players, is you're going to see more weight in the lead foot to start. But if you're someone who struggles to get the weight into your trail foot to start the backswing, then it may be good for you to start with it there. Now, it's not going to be as dynamic, it's not going to be as powerful, but it may be better for you to do, because it's much better for you to move the weight properly than to move it more powerful. It's much better to move it properly than to move it improperly, but maybe with because let's say you start with your weight on your lead foot, and then you don't start moving that pressure into your trail foot until you're way back here, right? Well, that's not gonna help you very much. It's not helping you to have that weight on that lead foot. So what we want to do is we want to move the pressure here. Then as we're around in this area, we want to start moving it into the lead foot, and then we want to continue to move it into the lead foot in the start of the downswing. So wherever you put your pressure to start the swing, that's you want to put yourself in a position to be able to do that in the best way possible, right? So me personally, I like to set up. I actually will move a little bit into my lead side and then go to my trail side to start the backswing. So my swing will kind of start like this. My club will still be on the ground. I'll move into my lead side and then I'll move into my trail side. They call it a counter move, right? Meaning that I'm just doing that so I can move more pressure dynamically into my trail side. So play around with it. Find what works best for you. But either one of them can work. One is a little bit more powerful than the other, but you may actually find that you find it easier to shift pressure if you just start with it on the trail side. That's why Clay suggests starting with the trail side, because we know that a lot of people struggle getting that pressure into the trail foot quickly. So some people, I think, maybe a majority of golfers would probably benefit from just starting with it there. But I would maybe try to move toward starting with it on the lead foot if you get really good at moving the pressure around, because it's going to be a little bit more dynamic and powerful for you. All right, let's keep going. So John C says, for the BSMC drills on the deep, shallow divots, I'm trying to use a divot board since the driving ranges near me are on mats. How can I best use the divot board to see if the divots are shallow or deep? So you're going to have to use your imagination a little bit on this, because obviously the divot board is going to look the same whether it's shallow or deep. So you're going to have to base it on the feel, right? So for a deeper divot, right, I'm going to have more of a thud, right? I'm going to have more of a thud into the ground. For a shallow divot, it's going to be more of a brushing, right? For like the normal divot, it's going to be a little heavier of a brushing, right? So deep divot's going to be more of a like a thud into the mat or the divot board. A normal divot's going to be more of a heavy brushing, and then the shallow divot's going to be a light brushing. So it's all dependent on feel and what you're having. The main thing here is you're going to be looking at your ability to control the thud, right? The thud or the amount of brushing that you're putting into the ground. So that's really what it comes down to. You're not going to be able to look at a divot and be able to say it's deep, normal, or shallow, because obviously you're not taking a divot. You're not taking a piece out of the mat. So you have to use your imagination a little bit on that. So Billy W says, what features should a 25 handicapper look for in a sand wedge? Plenty of bounce is what I would say. I just make sure that you get a sand wedge that has plenty of bounce, because bounce is your friend. Bounce is this hunk of metal that's on the bottom part of the club, right? This is what allows the club to dig less, because wedges have this sharp leading edge. The sharp leading edge wants to dig into the ground, right? So if we have the bounce, and that bounce is making contact with the turf first, it's going to tend to want to bounce off the ground, right? That's why they call it bounce. So I would just be looking at a sand wedge that has plenty of bounce. The C3I wedge, I think is a really good wedge. Those are like pretty high bounce wedges. So I think a high handicapper is going to benefit from a very high bounce wedge. So there's other manufacturers that make them. I think Cleveland, I think, has a very high bounce wedge. I've seen Callaway has a very high bounce wedge. So I'd be looking at like a really high bounce wedge. That's typically going to be the best for a high handicapper, because they're going to tend to dig less. They're easier to hit. Now they're less versatile, but if you're a 25 handicapper, you don't need a versatile club, because you're not hitting. If you're 25 handicapper, you're not going to be hitting all these kind of versatile kind of shots like a pro is, right? You need something that's going to be easy to hit, that you can get up in the air and maybe get some spin on it. And a high bounce wedge is going to allow you to do that. So like I said, C3I is one. Cleveland, I think, has one. There's several brands out there, and check them out. But maybe do a Google search of high bounce wedges, and you'll see what I'm talking about. You'll see wedges that have a bounce. It'll be like this. It'll be like a big hunk of metal on the back, and that allows it to glide on the turf more easily. All right, so John A says, what is a good drill to start the downswing from the ground up? I'm getting behind the ball, but my first move is with my upper body. The step drill. The step drill is really the best drill out there to help with that. Start with the feet together, right? Swing the club back. As you swing the club back, you step forward, right? So before the arms start down, I want you to get pressure in that lead foot and then swing through, all right? So do plenty of reps without a ball. And then what you're going to do is you're going to do normal stance, and you're going to do some practice swings where you're replicating the timing of the pressure into the ground, right? So you're going to go pressure trail foot, swing the club back, and then as you're swinging the club back, pressure is going to move forward. Get that pressure in the lead foot before you start your downswing. Swing through from there. Do plenty of practice swings. Getting good at that. Then I'd maybe clip a tee. Get to where you can do it, clipping it. Put a tee in the ground and clip a tee. Then I'd maybe once you get good at that, then I put a ball on the tee and get to where you can hit the ball off the tee, doing the same pressure into the ground, right? Once you're able to do that, then I would take the ball off the tee and just hit it right off the ground. Just work through that progression, and it should help you to be able to start the swing from the ground up. John C says, is everyone getting video? Mine has stalled. It says that it's working fine, so I'm guessing it may just be on your end, John. Sorry about that. Hopefully it's starting to work better. But yeah, keep the questions coming. We got plenty of time left here. Good deal, John. So Don says, what do you use to trigger to start your swing? Really what I do is I look, I do a look of the target and I kind of waggle. So basically I'll be over, kind of look at the shot. Let me get a ball here. So here I'll be visualizing the shot. I really like, what's helped me the most is really visualizing what I'm trying to do. I think if people did this, they would, I think they would be a lot better for it. So what I try to do is I try to play a movie in my mind, exactly what I'm trying to do. I get behind the ball, I'm playing that movie in my mind, right? And then I'm going to get over it here, and I'm going to set up, for where I'm starting it, right? And I'm always moving around, right? So my feet are moving, my hands are moving, the club head's moving. So I'm staying nice and loose and athletic. And when I'm over this ball, I'm still kind of playing the movie in my mind. I'm visualizing what I'm going to see, right? And then I'll look down and I'll put the club down, and that's what starts my swing. So as soon as the club kind of gets grounded, I start my swing from there, right? So that's essentially what my trigger is I'll be looking up, right? I'm waggling, kind of moving around, right? And then I'll put the club down, right? And then I just kind of sink into the shot a little bit, and then I go, right? So that's the way that I start my swing. But everyone's got different things, right? That may not be what would work very well for you. You may find that works terrible. Everyone's a little bit different. Some people might do like a forward press. Some people might, lift up the club, right? Some people have the club on the ground and they lift it up and bring it back. Some people may kick in their leg, right? Some people may kick in their leg and bring the club back. There's all kinds of ways to start the swing. So you just have to find what works best for you. So John A says, as a addition to my earlier question, how do you keep the right shoulder working under? I assume mine is coming up because I'm lunging. Hard to say without seeing your swing, but it comes from what's called side bend, right? So when we're starting our downswing, we're going to be side bending, which is, think about it this way: if I keep my hips level and then I tilt from my spine, you think of my rib cage kind of tilting this way. That's what side bend is, right? So when I get up to the top, I actually have left side bend. I'm doing the same thing, but I'm doing this, right? That's what's keeping my shoulders from getting level as I get up to the top, right? So I'm going to go up to the top, and I have left side bend. And then when I start my downswing, I start moving toward right side bend. And as I come into impact, I'm going into right side bend, right? That's what's keeping my right shoulder from going down. And then I come up out of it as I come around into the full finish. So it's right side bend that keeps the shoulders kind of from getting to level at the top. So it's a left side bend as we go up to the top, and then right side bend. So kind of think about it this way. Here I would be at address. I'm going up to the top of the swing. There's the top of the swing. And now I'm starting my downswing and then coming into impact. And then I'm going into the full finish right here. So as I come around to the full finish, right, I'm going to go back to kind of my shoulders being more level. So a good drill to kind of help you get the feeling of this is to take a club and put it across your shoulders. And make sure that you put it nice and high on your shoulders. When a lot of times when I see people, I tell them, hey, put the club across your shoulders. They take it and they go like this, right? This is your chest, right? We want it on top of the shoulders. So basically, you want that club up against your neck, right? That's on top of the shoulders. Because if we put it down here, then we can kind of move our arms and make it look like our shoulders are pointing in a direction that they're not. If we put it up here, if we move our arms and stuff, it doesn't really move around the club as much. So what we're going to do is we're going to start out like this. And then in the backswing, you want this angle down a little bit, right? A little bit outside the ball. You know, you think of it as being roughly, 8-10 feet outside the ball. That's where you're going to be in the backswing, right? So because in order to do this, I have to have some left side bend, right? If I'm more level, right? So let's say I don't have any left side bend and I just turn, right? That's going to be pretty level, right? Let's say I go into right side bend, I get really level, right? Or let's say my hips go forward, right? I get level, right? So I want to feel like I angle this down toward the ground. That's going to give me left side bend. And then in the downswing, I'm going to do the same thing. I want to feel the right side. I want this angle toward the ground. And then I'm going to come around to the full finish. So that's a great way to be able to feel the left and right side bend throughout the swing. So Mike W says, my miss is always left. I pull, not a hook. How can I prevent this? So what causes a pull is a steep over the top swing, right? So you're swinging to the left, right? And then your club face is in the same direction as that, right? So club face is in the same direction to left. So you can think of it as you're swinging. If we put numbers on it, you could say you're swinging 10 degrees to the left, and then your face is also pointed 10 degrees to the left. That's going to produce a ball flight that starts left and just goes straight left, right? So if we want to change that, we need to feel like we're swinging much more to the right, much more to the right. You need to swing more and out, swing more toward first base. That's what you need to do. So that's what I'd recommend doing, working through, maybe putting something on the ground, like a box. So here's a box. I put this box on the ground. I put it a little bit behind and to the right of my ball, right? So I'm going to put it right there. If I were to swing to the left, I'm going to hit that box, right? So this is going to force me to swing more out to the right and to get, I would actually try to push some out to the right and then tone it down, right? So doing a box drill like that will help you to get, it doesn't necessarily have to be a box, just something in the way that isn't going to damage your club. I think most of us have like a box from an Amazon package. That's basically what that is. just something that's not going to damage your club or you. Like an old cardboard box will usually do the trick. And you also want something that's big enough that's going to get in your way. See people use like a head cover. To me, it's probably not quite big enough. Doesn't have a high enough profile on it. And also, you don't want to be messing up your head covers. If you hit a head cover a few times, it can tear it up. It doesn't really matter if you tear up a box. So like an old shoe box, something like that, would work just fine. But just a little bit behind and to the right of your ball to force the path to work from the inside, to force you to swing more toward first base. That should straighten out your ball flight. Now, the other thing to keep in mind as well, a lot of times I see people pull shots because the ball position is really far forward. So when your ball position is really far forward, you'll tend to come over the top more. So you may find that if you put that box there, you may find it difficult to get to the ball, right? And it may be because the ball position is just too far forward, right? So moving that ball position more toward the middle of your stance will make it a lot easier to attack it from the inside. All right, keep the questions coming. If you're just joining, I'm just waiting for a question to be asked. So if you got a question, now's the time to post it. So Mike W says, this happens with my driver the most. I try to hit I'll try to line it up with my left heel. Should I move the ball closer to the middle on my driver? Um, Maybe not toward the middle, but maybe a little bit more back may help you too. Because one thing we have to understand is we have to shallow out the club more with the driver because the ball position is more forward. So doing the box drill is with the driver is something you can do as well. But if you find that you're having a really hard time swinging to the inside with the box there, then moving the ball position a little bit back. You don't want it to be in the middle necessarily because that's going to typically promote more of a downward, um, you know, angle of attack into the ball. That's going to make you hit like low, really spinny drives, which isn't going to be good for distance. So we still want the ball a little bit forward in the stance with the driver, but if you're able to do it with it more forward in the stance, that's even better because that's going to allow you to get higher launch, lower spin, and more distance. But if you're really having trouble, with yanking those drives to the left with the ball position where it is, it probably benefits you to move it back a little bit, but not really, not all the way toward the middle though. I'm just jumping on here. I'm just waiting for a question to be asked. We got about 15 minutes left, so I'll stay on here till noon. So if you got questions, noon Eastern time. So if you got questions, now's a good time to ask. If not, no worries. So Willis says, video shows I'm sliding toward the target in my swing. How can I work on this? Well, keep in mind that there is going to be some lateral movement of your body in the swing, right? So some of that's fine. I would only call it really sliding if the hips are really getting outside of the ankle quite a bit. So that would be like the compression line course would be what I would recommend to work on to improve that. So what I mean by that is your hip joint getting outside. So I would call this sliding, right? This would be kind of like where we're coming in. You can see how my hip, if we were to take my club and hold it vertically up from my ankle joint, you can see how my hip is at outside of that. That's what I would call sliding. But if you look at here, I turn back, right? There's going to be some forward movement of my hip, right? This isn't necessarily sliding. This is just moving pressure into my lead foot. And here I am at contact. If you were to take the line that from the middle of my ankle, right, up, you can see how my hip joint would be inside of that quite a bit. So as long as the hip joint is staying inside, that's not sliding. But if it's moving outside, that's where we're bumping the hips out and we're outside of the compression line. So I would recommend working on the compression line. There's a drill in the compression line course where you take an alignment stick, you put it in the ground right outside your foot, and basically you just make swings moving into your lead side where you don't touch the stick, right? So that'd be a good drill if you're actually sliding, but you want to make sure that you actually are sliding. If you're just moving your body forward and you're keeping in your compression line, everything looks good, then that's not sliding. That's exactly what you should be doing. Sliding would be where we're getting the hip way out, too far out, bumped out in front. All right, we got about 10 minutes or so left here. All right, so John A says, do you think hitting balls with my feet together would also help me from starting with my upper body? Most likely not, because if anything, that will encourage you because it's very hard to get a good weight shift and use the ground with your feet close together. right, it encourages you to use more of your upper body. So um, it would actually more than likely do the opposite. You're more than likely start using the upper body more because you can't really shift in turn as well when your feet are really close together. So if you're really struggling with upper body, I wouldn't really recommend doing feet close together. What feet close together? One thing that I think taking feet close together swings helps with is maybe tempo. If you're getting a little bit quick and rushing your swing, taking feet close together swings can help you do that because it's very difficult to go quick. It's more difficult to go quick. And then if you can copy that same kind of tempo with your feet closer together, then to a with a normal stance swing, then that can help you to maybe improve your tempo and your timing. But to get rid of the upper body, if you're starting the downswing with the upper body, feet close together, it's actually going to you're actually going to want to do that even more because it's not encouraging you to use your lower body very much. So Aaron R said, you mentioned that sometimes a person might need to swing more to the right to keep from coming over the top. The moving of my body usually swing the club. The moving of my body usually swing the club. So how do I control the direction of my swing? Yeah, so it's going to be coming, I would think of it more of your shoulders, right? So when your shoulders open up, that's going to tend to make you swing more to the left for a right-handed golfer, right? So if I'm at the top of the swing and my shoulders really open up, right, then that's going to tend to make me swing more to the left. If I feel like my shoulders are very closed off, then that's going to help me to swing more to the right. So that's typically the best way to think about it is think about the direction your shoulders are pointing. So if I open up my shoulders, I'm going to tend to swing to the left. If I close off my shoulders, that's going to make me swing more to the right. So that's how I would try to control it. If you're having trouble with coming over the top, typically, the shoulders and the arms are all kind of going out like this. And what you may need to feel is that your shoulders are staying closed off and your arms are swinging more out that way. All right, we got about 5 minutes left here. So Willis says, I understand that a putter has around 4 degrees of loft. Should you try to keep that loft with a flat putter face? Or is it okay to have the hands a little forward, uh, de-loft in it? You don't want to have them forward too much. Forward a little bit is fine. But we want to have some loft on the putter to allow the putter to lift the ball up out of the hole. Or out of the grass that's on the green. It may not realize it, but the ball is when it's on the green, it's on grass, right? So it needs to be lifted up out of that a little bit with the putting stroke, right? So that is going to be done mostly with the loft of the putter. So if you have the hands forward too much, then you could come in with negative loft, right, and end up hitting the ball into the ground, which is not going to help it roll very well, right? And if let's say you had the putter leaning back too much, that would add too much loft, and then it may get too much backspin, right? And then that's not going to make it roll very well. So really, to know how much loft you need to have on your putter, you really need to get professionally fitted for your putter. It's definitely one club that I recommend that you get professionally fitted for, because I mean, one, you hit a lot of shots with it, right? It's a crucial club in the bag, and that's a big part of it. So, if you're more comfortable with having the hands more forward and you make a better stroke with the hands more forward, you're probably going to need a putter with more loft on it, right? On the other side of that, we've seen Matt Kuchar, in the last year or so, he actually has backward shaftling. So he does kind of the reverse arm lock where he putts like this. So his shaft is actually, he has backward shaftling with his putter. Well, if he had normal loft on his putter, he would just have way too much loft. He'd be getting too much spin. So I don't know the specs on Matt Kuchar's putter, but I'd be willing to guess that he has negative loft on his putter because he has so much backward shaft lean. He's like this when he's putting, and that's what he's found that he puts the best with, right? But he needs to have the loft adjusted for that. So unfortunately, there's no way for me to know, okay, you need to have 4 degrees of loft or 6 degrees of loft or 2 degrees of loft. It's just something you have to get professionally fitted for to know, what you need to have. So that's what I would recommend you do if you truly want to know. One thing that you can do is kind of see how the ball is coming off of your putter. All of our cameras or all of our phones, I think these days most people don't have flip phones anymore, and they have the smartphones with the slow motion camera. You can set it up, the slow motion camera, to watch your ball. And ideally, what you would kind of want to see, let me grab my two-tone ball here. So ideally, what you would want to see is you would want to see this ball being elevated a little bit out, and then kind of knuckling a little bit, and then starting to tumble over as it rolls. If it comes back a little, so if you hit it and it actually starts going back a little bit, that's fine. What we don't want to see is where we come in and the ball is really backspinning a ton. It's getting really airborne, and then because that's going to cause it to kind of skid, right? And then that's not going to roll very true, or it's not going to roll as true, right? And what we also don't want to see is this ball being putted into the ground, so it's bouncing off of the ground, because again, that's not going to roll very true either. So ideally, what we'd want to see is this ball being lifted out and this ball kind of knuckling and then tumbling over and rolling. That's going to give you the most pure roll. So you can kind of see that in slow motion. Now you'll be able to see if you see this ball getting up in the air too much, and then it's really kind of backspinning quite a bit. Then okay, I probably have too much loft on my putter. I can either have a little bit more shaft lean. And keep in mind, if you set up with a lot of shaft lean, that doesn't mean that you're going to stroke it with shaft lean. It's all about how you're presenting it to it. So I can set up here, right, and have lots of shaft lean and then put it like this, right? So it's not really a natural thing. I doubt most of you would be doing something like that, but just keep it in mind. It's not about necessarily how you set up. It's about how you're presenting the putter to it, right? So if you find that you're kind of flipping the putter a little bit and it's getting up in the air, you may want to get your hands a little bit more forward and kind of keep them forward. And you may find that may roll a little bit truer. Now, if you're setting up like this, right, and you're putting that ball into the ground, it's bouncing a lot, right, you may find that setting up with the shaft more straight up and down may give you a better pure roll. Or what you can do is you can get fitted to for the stroke that you're the best at. Maybe when you set up like this, you make the best stroke from this position. The problem is that if you have a putter that's off the rack that has, typically it's going to have around 4 degrees of loft, a putter that you just go to the store and buy that's not fitted to you, it's going to have typically around 4 degrees of loft, right? If you're doing that, then you may want to get fitted for a putter that has more loft on it, so that way you can keep your hands more in front. Now the arm lock putters, the standard arm lock putters, they're typically going to have more loft on them because they're made to be putted with more shaft lean, right? They're made that way because they know you're going to be holding it like this, and that's going to be more shaft lean, right? So if you're in that situation, odds are that putter is already going to have more loft on it, but it just depends. So I definitely recommend it. Aaron R says, thank you. That goes along with the side bend that you mentioned. No problem. All right. Thanks everybody for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern time again. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to y'all next time.